Dr. Han Ji-won stood at the window of her office in the Seoul Advanced Space Research Center. She watched the rain fall on the city below. In her hands, she held a small glass tube filled with reddish soil from Mars. This tiny sample had taken 5 years to get, but it was worth every minute of waiting. The clock on her wall showed 9:30 a.m. In 30 minutes, she would present her new technology to the World Space Council. This meeting could change the future of human space travel. G1 had created a way to make Mars's air more like Earth's air, much faster than anyone thought possible. "Are you ready?" Engineer Kim Do-hyun's voice came from her office door. Do-hyun had been her friend for 20 years. He helped her build and test her invention. "I'm ready," Ji-won said, turning away from the window. "But will they listen?" Do-hyun walked into the office and looked at the presentation screens. They showed pictures of Mars, charts, and test results. "They have to listen. Your tests work. The numbers don't lie." Ji-won picked up her tablet and checked her presentation one more time. Her invention was simple but powerful. It used special bacteria that could live in Mars' cold air. These bacteria could make oxygen faster than any machine. Even better, they could spread on their own. The problem was, many scientists thought it was too good to be true. Last week, Dr. Wilson from NASA had called her work science fiction. The European Space Agency said her tests must be wrong. "It's time," Do-hyun said, pointing at the clock. They walked to the big meeting room. Screens on the walls showed faces of scientists from all over the world. Ji-won saw Dr. Wilson's frown and the doubtful looks from others. "Dr. Han," the council head said, "you claim you can make Mars's air breathable in 50 years. The best estimates say this would take 500 years. Please explain." Ji-won took a deep breath. She showed them the Mars soil sample. "In this tube, my bacteria have been living and making oxygen for 6 months. They survive in temperatures as cold as Mars. They eat the carbon dioxide in Mars's air and make oxygen, and they multiply very fast." She showed them videos of her tests. The bacteria growing in Mars-like conditions, the oxygen levels rising day after day. The proof was clear. Dr. Wilson spoke up. "But Dr. Han, bacteria can't survive Mars radiation." Ji-won smiled. This was the question she had waited for. She typed on her tablet, and a new image appeared. It showed the bacteria's special outer shell that protected it from radiation. "Nature on Earth has already solved this problem," she said. "These bacteria are like the ones found in nuclear waste pools. But we made them better. They can repair their own radiation damage." The room went quiet. Scientists whispered to each other. Ji-won could see them looking at her data again, thinking hard. Do-hyun stepped forward. "We've tested this for 5 years," he said. "Every test shows the same results. This technology works." One by one, the scientists started asking different questions. Not, "Is this possible?" but "How soon can we try this on Mars?" Ji-won felt her heart beat faster. They were starting to believe. The council head raised his hand for silence. "Dr. Han, your idea is revolutionary. We need time to check your work, but if everything you say is true, you may have given us the key to living on Mars." Ji-won nodded. "I understand. Check everything. Test everything. But please hurry. Mars is waiting for us." As they left the meeting room, Do-hyun grinned at her. "They're convinced. It's just a matter of time now." Ji-won looked at the Mars soil sample in her hand. Soon, this red dust would be under human feet. Thanks to her bacteria, people would breathe Mars air within her lifetime. "We did it," she said quietly. "We really did it." Do-hyun put a hand on her shoulder. "No, Ji-won. This is just the beginning." 5 years had passed since Dr. Han's presentation. Now, Commander Lee Sung-min stood on the red soil of Mars, looking at the newly built Phoenix base. The white domes of the base shone under the pale Martian sun. After 3 months of hard work, They had finally finished the main buildings. Sung Min checked the oxygen level on his suit display. "Base control, how are the air readings in Dome 1?" he asked through his radio. "All green, Commander," replied Engineer Choi Yun-ho from inside the base. "The air is safe to breathe. You can come in now." Sung Min walked to the airlock with steady steps. Even after 3 months, walking in the lower gravity of Mars felt strange. The airlock hissed as it cleaned his suit and filled with air. When the inner door opened, he removed his helmet and took his first breath of the day's fresh air. Park Mayray was waiting for him inside. As the base's agricultural specialist, she had exciting news. "Commander, you need to see this," she said, leading him to the greenhouse dome. The greenhouse was Mayray's pride. Rows of plants grew under special lights. But today, she took him to a new section. There, plants grew in pure Martian soil. "I mixed Dr. Han's bacteria with the soil 2 weeks ago," Mayray explained. "Look how strong these plants are. They're growing faster than the ones in Earth's soil." Sung Min touched a green leaf gently. This was more than just a plant. It was proof that humans could grow food on Mars. "How soon can we expand the garden?" he asked. "Give me 2 more weeks to run tests," Mayray said. "If everything stays good, we can start using Martian soil in the whole greenhouse." Their radio buzzed. "Commander," called Dr. Kang Haijin, the base geologist. "The water ice drilling team found something interesting. Can you come to the East Tunnel?" Sung Min and Miro walked through the connected domes to the East Tunnel. The base looked like a group of bubbles from the outside, but inside, it was a small town. 12 people lived here now, each with their own job to do. In the tunnel, Haijin pointed at the drill readings on her screen. "We were drilling for water ice, but we found a hollow space," she said. "It looks like a natural cave system. If it's big enough, we could build more of the base underground. The rock would protect us from radiation better than the domes." Sung Min studied the readings. After 3 months on Mars, they were still finding surprises. "Mark this location," he said. "We'll send the robots to explore it tomorrow." That evening, the team gathered in the common room for dinner. They sat at 2 round tables, eating food grown in their own greenhouse mixed with supplies from Earth. The room buzzed with excited talk about the day's discoveries. "Earth Control sent a message," Yun-ho announced. "The second supply ship launched today. It will reach us in 6 months." "Did they approve our expansion plan?" asked Mayray. Sung Min nodded. "They did. After seeing our progress, they're sending 4 more people with the next crew rotation. Phoenix Base is officially becoming a permanent settlement." The room filled with cheers. They had done more than just survive on Mars. They had started to make it a home. Later that night, Sung Min wrote in the base log, "Day 100 on Mars. Today we grew food in Martian soil and found caves that could house future colonists. Every day brings new challenges, but also new victories. The red planet is harsh, but it's teaching us how to live here. Step by step, we're proving that Mars can be more than just a scientific outpost. It can be a new world for humanity." He looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth shone like a blue jewel. Soon, more people would make this journey. Phoenix Base would grow, and others would follow. The dream of living on Mars wasn't just a dream anymore. It was becoming real, one day at a time. Chief Engineer Choi Yun-ho woke up to the sound of alarms. The red warning lights flashed across his small room in Phoenix Base. He quickly checked his computer screen and felt his heart skip a beat. A massive dust storm was heading straight for them. "All personnel to the control room," Commander Lee's voice came through the speakers. "This is not a drill." Yun-ho rushed to the control room, where the main screen showed a wall of red dust moving toward the base. The storm was bigger than any they had seen before. "How long until it hits us?" Commander Lee asked, his face serious. 1 hour, Yun-ho replied, checking the weather sensors. "Maybe less. And sir, it's going to last at least 3 days." The room went quiet. 3 days of darkness meant 3 days without solar power. Their backup batteries would not last that long. What about the oxygen generators? Dr. Park Mireille asked. She had come straight from the greenhouse, still wearing her work clothes. Yunho typed quickly on his keyboard. With full batteries, we have oxygen for 2 days. After that, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew what would happen if they ran out of oxygen. Commander Lee pressed the emergency communication button. Earth Control, this is Phoenix Base. We have an emergency situation. The reply took 20 minutes to reach them from Earth. By then, the storm's edge had already reached the base. The wind howled against the dome walls, and fine red dust began to cover the solar panels. Phoenix Base, this is Earth Control. Dr. Han Ji-won is here to help. Yunho felt a small relief hearing his old friend's voice. 5 years ago, her bacteria had helped them create oxygen on Mars. Maybe she could help them again. Yunho, Ji-won's voice crackled through the speakers. The bacteria tanks in Dome 3. How are they doing? He checked the readings. Still working. The bacteria are producing oxygen normally. Good. Listen carefully. The bacteria can survive without power. They'll keep making oxygen even in the dark. But you need to keep them warm. Yunho understood immediately. We can redirect all our backup power to heating the bacteria tanks instead of running the mechanical oxygen generators. Exactly, Ji-won said. But you'll need to move everyone into Dome 3. You don't have enough power to heat all the domes. Commander Lee looked at his team. Moving to one dome meant leaving most of their equipment and personal rooms, but it was their only choice. Start moving now, he ordered. Take only what you need to survive. Mireille, bring your critical plants. Everyone else, grab your emergency kits. The next hour was a blur of activity. The storm hit with full force, turning the Martian day into night. Inside Dome 3, 13 people and a collection of essential plants huddled around the bacteria tanks. The tanks bubbled softly, turning Mars carbon dioxide into precious oxygen. Yunho worked nonstop, monitoring the power levels and temperature. Every bit of energy was precious now. They turned off all unnecessary systems and sat in dim emergency lighting. Day 1. Commander Lee wrote in his emergency log. The storm rages outside. We can hear it even through the dome walls. But inside, we're alive. The bacteria are our lifeline. We never expected them to save us like this. For 3 days and nights, they lived in the cramped space of Dome 3. They told stories, played cards, and kept each other's spirits up. The bacteria tanks kept working, providing them with air to breathe. On the 4th morning, Yunho saw the first rays of sunlight breaking through the dust. The storm was ending. When he looked at the power readings, he smiled. They had made it through with some battery power to spare. We did it, he said quietly, touching the bacteria tank. Together with Earth's help, and these tiny bacteria, we survived our first major crisis on Mars. As the dust settled, they began cleaning the solar panels and moving back to their rooms. But something had changed. They weren't just 12 separate people anymore. They were a true Mars colony, tested by crisis and stronger for it. Dr. Kang Haijin walked carefully through the Martian cave, her headlamp lighting the way. The cave walls sparkled with ice crystals. 2 months had passed since they first found these caves, and each day brought new discoveries. Base Control, are you getting the video feed? She asked through her radio. The special camera on her helmet sent live pictures back to Phoenix Base. Clear as day, Engineer Choi Yunho replied. The cave looks much bigger than our initial scans showed. Haijin moved deeper into the cave. Her equipment showed safe oxygen levels. The bacteria they had released here were working well. These bacteria, created by Dr. Han, were changing the cave air just like they had changed the air in the domes. Suddenly, her light revealed something that made her stop. Yunho, are you seeing this? The cave opened into a massive underground chamber. Her light couldn't reach the far walls. Ice covered the ceiling like a frozen sky. But most importantly, the floor was flat and solid, perfect for building. "Commander Lee needs to see this," she said. "This chamber could hold a city." An hour later, Commander Lee Sung-min stood beside her in the chamber. His eyes were wide as he looked around. "How stable is it?" he asked. "Very stable," Hai-jin answered. "The rock above us is thick enough to block radiation better than our domes. The ice in the walls and ceiling can give us water. And look at this." She pointed her sensor at the ground. "The floor is solid basalt. We can build right on it." Commander Lee walked to the center of the chamber. His footsteps echoed in the vast space. How many people could live here? Hai-jin checked her calculations. With proper construction, 1,000, maybe more. And there are more chambers like this one. We found 3 so far. Back at Phoenix Base, they gathered everyone in the meeting room. The screen showed maps of the cave system. Park Myre, who had started growing mushrooms in some of the smaller caves, spoke first. "The caves are perfect for farming," she said. "The temperature stays steady. We can control the light. And the bacteria are already making the air breathable." Yun-ho pointed to different parts of the map. "We can put living quarters here, research labs here, and storage areas here. The natural rock will protect everything from dust storms and radiation." Commander Lee looked at each person in the room. "This changes everything," he said. "Earth Control has already approved our plan to move most of our base underground. The next supply ship will bring mining robots and building materials." "What about the domes?" someone asked. "We'll keep them as our connection to the surface," Lee answered. "But our future is down here, protected by Mars itself." Over the next few weeks, Hai-jin spent every day exploring and mapping the caves. She found more chambers, natural tunnels, and even a deep well of ice that could provide water for years. Each discovery made her more certain. This was how humans would truly live on Mars. One evening, as she finished her daily report, Hai-jin wrote, "Mars hasn't just given us caves. It's given us a home. Above ground, we were visitors fighting against the planet. Down here, we can work with it. The same rocks that made Mars seem harsh and dead will now protect us and help us live." She looked at the cave map one more time before sending her report to Earth. The first colonists had dreamed of building cities on Mars's surface. Instead, they would build them inside Mars itself. Sometimes, she thought, the best solutions hide in unexpected places, even underground on an alien world. The landing ship descended through the thin Martian atmosphere, carrying 38 new colonists to Phoenix Base. Among them was Han Suji, daughter of Dr. Han Ji-won. She watched through the window as the red surface of Mars came closer. The white domes of Phoenix Base looked tiny against the vast desert. Commander Lee Sung-min stood at the landing pad, wearing his protective suit. The base had changed much in the past year. New domes connected to the cave entrances, and solar panels covered the nearby hills. He checked the time. 5 minutes until landing. Inside the ship, Suji held tightly to her special cargo, an improved version of her mother's bacteria processor. She had spent 3 years making it better, stronger, and faster at creating oxygen. Now she would test it on Mars itself. The ship landed with a gentle touch. Suji waited as the airlock cycled. Then the door opened, and she took her first step onto Mars. Even through her suit, she could feel the crunch of red soil under her boots. "Welcome to Mars," Commander Lee said through the radio. "Your new home." Among the new arrivals were families with children. 10-year-old Kim Jun-seo bounced in the low gravity, holding his parents' hands. His father, Dr. Kim Ta-won, was the base's new chief medical officer. His mother, Dr. Song Mei-jin, would help expand the underground farms. Suji followed Commander Lee to the science lab in the underground chamber. The cave system had been transformed. Metal floors covered the natural rock, and bright lights hung from the ceiling. The air was clean and breathable, thanks to her mother's original bacteria. "This will be your workspace," Lee said, showing her a large room filled with equipment. "The whole base is excited about your new processor." Sujay began setting up her equipment. The new processor was smaller than the old ones, but could make more oxygen. It also produced less heat, which meant it needed less power to run. That evening, the base held a welcome dinner in the main cave chamber. 50 people sat at long tables, eating food grown in the underground farms. The chamber echoed with talk and laughter. Children ran between the tables, amazing the original colonists who hadn't seen a child in over a year. "Look at this," Engineer Choi Yunho said to Suji, pointing at the ceiling. "Your mother's bacteria started growing naturally in the cave walls. They're spreading on their own now." Suji smiled. This was exactly what they had hoped for. The bacteria were making Mars more livable by themselves. Her new processor would speed up this process even more. Commander Lee stood to make a speech. "Today marks a new chapter for Phoenix Base," he said. "We are no longer just a science mission. With these families joining us, we are becoming a true colony, a new society on a new world." He turned to face the children. "You young ones will grow up as the first true Martians. This world may look harsh now, but it will be your home. And with help from people like Suji here, we'll make it better every day." After dinner, Suji walked to the surface dome. She looked through the clear walls at the Martian sunset. The sky glowed pink and orange. She thought about her mother back on Earth, who had started all this with a simple idea about bacteria. "We did it, Mom," she whispered. "Your dream is growing. Mars isn't just a place we visit anymore. It's becoming a place where people live, where children play, where a new branch of human civilization is starting. And I'm here to help it grow." Dr. Kim Min-ji checked the medical monitors one more time. In the bed next to her, Lee Soo-yeon was about to make history. After 15 months on Mars, Soo-yeon would become the mother of the first human born on another planet. The medical center in the underground colony was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines. Min-ji had prepared for this moment for months. She had studied every possible complication that Mars's lower gravity might cause. Now it was time to put that knowledge to use. "How are you feeling?" Min-ji asked, checking Soo-yeon's vital signs. "Ready to meet my little Martian," Soo-yeon said with a tired smile. Her husband, Park Ji-hoon, held her hand tightly. The labor progressed smoothly. Min-ji's research had shown that the lower gravity might actually make some parts of childbirth easier. Still, she watched every detail carefully. This birth would teach them much about human life on Mars. In the waiting area outside, Commander Lee Sung-min paced back and forth. The whole base felt the importance of this moment. Some colonists worked at their regular jobs, but many gathered in small groups, waiting for news. Han Soo-jae sat in her lab, running tests on the cave's air quality. Her new bacteria processors had made the air cleaner than ever. Now they would help a new life take its first breath on Mars. After 6 hours, a baby's cry echoed through the medical center. Min-ji smiled as she held up the healthy baby girl. "Meet the first true Martian," she said. The baby was perfect. 2 bright eyes, 10 fingers, 10 toes. Min-ji quickly checked her vital signs. Everything looked normal, despite the unique conditions of her birth. The baby was strong and healthy, already adapted to the gravity she would grow up in. "She's beautiful," Soo-yeon whispered, holding her daughter for the first time. "Our little Min-seo, the first child of Mars." News of the birth spread quickly through the base. Cheers erupted in the common areas. People hugged and cried. This was more than just a medical achievement. It was proof that humans could truly live and grow on another world. Commander Lee made the official announcement to Earth. At 14:22 Mars Standard Time, Lee Min-seo became the first human born on Mars. Mother and child are healthy. Today, humanity has put down roots in new soil. The message would take several minutes to reach Earth. When it did, celebrations would begin there too. But the biggest celebration was on Mars itself. In the medical center, Minji wrote detailed notes about the birth. Everything she learned would help future Mars mothers. She looked at baby Minseo, sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms. The baby didn't know she was making history. She didn't know that scientists and doctors would study every detail of her growth and development. "Your life will be different from any human before you," Minji said softly to the sleeping baby. "You'll never feel Earth's gravity. You'll grow up seeing the red rocks and 2 moons in the sky. This alien world will be your normal." That evening, the base held a small ceremony. Following a tradition started by the first crew, they planted a seed in the underground garden to mark the occasion. This seed would grow into a tree alongside the new child, marking the beginning of a true Martian generation. As the colonists celebrated, Minji thought about what this birth meant. Humans had not just visited Mars or built bases on it. Now they had brought new life to it. Mars was no longer just a place they were trying to change. It was becoming a world where children would be born, grow up, and have children of their own. 10 years had passed since the first Mars birth. Colony Administrator Baek Jin-ho sat in his office, reading reports about the growing tension between Earth-born and Mars-born colonists. The colony now had 200 people, and 50 of them had been born on Mars. Jin-ho looked through his window at the underground city. The main cave chamber now had buildings 3 stories tall. Streets with electric carts connected different areas. Lights on the ceiling changed to match Earth's day and night cycle. But not everyone wanted to follow Earth's ways anymore. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Lee Minseo, now 10 years old, and the first person born on Mars, entered with her friend Kim Jun-seo, who had come from Earth as a child. "Administrator Baek," Minseo said formally, "we want to talk about the new school rules." Jin-ho smiled at them. The new rules said all Mars children must spend 2 hours each day in the Earth gravity chamber to keep their bones strong. "What about them?" "They're not fair," Minseo said. "The gravity chamber makes us sick. We're not built for Earth gravity. This is our home, but the rules are made for Earth people." Jun-seo nodded. "I remember Earth, but Mars is my home now too. Why do we have to follow Earth's rules?" Their complaint was not new. Many young Martians were questioning the Earth-based regulations. They wanted to develop their own way of life, adapted to Mars conditions. Later that day, Jin-ho met with the colony's council. Dr. Kim Minji, who had delivered Minseo, showed them new medical data. "The Mars-born children are different," she explained. "Their bones and muscles are perfectly healthy in Mars gravity. Forcing them to experience Earth gravity might do more harm than good." Engineer Choi Yun-ho, now gray-haired but still active, spoke next. "Earth still controls our supplies, our expansion plans, even our daily schedules. But we've learned things about living on Mars that Earth scientists don't understand." Han Suji, whose improved bacteria had made the cave air even better, stood up. "We need to find a balance. We can't separate completely from Earth, but we need more freedom to adapt to our conditions." Jin-ho listened to everyone's views. The colony needed Earth's support, but it also needed to grow in its own way. He thought about Minseo and the other Mars children. They were the future of this world. That evening, he wrote a long message to Earth's Space Council. He explained that the Mars colony needed more independence in its daily operations. The Mars-born generation was creating its own culture, its own way of living. Fighting this natural development would only cause more problems. "We are not trying to break away from Earth," he wrote. "We are trying to grow up. Like a child becoming an adult, we need to find our own path while maintaining family ties. Mars will always be Earth's child, but now that child is learning to walk on its own legs, even if those legs are adapted to different gravity." The reply from Earth would take months to negotiate. But Jin-ho knew they had started an important conversation. In his personal log, he wrote, "Today's children will be tomorrow's leaders. They will not see Mars as a harsh world to be conquered, but as a home to be cherished. They will not dream of living on Earth, but of making Mars a better place for future generations. This is not what we expected when we first came here, but perhaps it is something better. The birth of a new branch of human civilization. 30 years had passed since the first landing on Mars. Han Taeyong stood at the window of the surface observation dome, watching the morning fog roll across the Martian plains. The fog was new, a sign that the atmosphere was changing. As the grandson of Dr. Han Ji-won and son of Han Soo-ji, Taeyong had grown up with Mars terraforming in his blood. "The sensors are showing another temperature increase," said Dr. Park Min-seo, the first human born on Mars. Now an environmental scientist, she worked with Taeyong on the planet-wide terraforming project. "Your new bacteria are working faster than we expected." Taeyong nodded, checking the data on his tablet. His grandmother had created the first Mars bacteria. His mother had made them better. Now he had created a new version that could survive in the open Martian air, spreading across the planet's surface like a living blanket. "Look at this," Min-seo said, pointing to a video feed from one of their remote cameras. A small pool of liquid water had formed in a valley. It wasn't frozen, even though it was exposed to the Martian air. The temperature was finally staying above freezing in some places. The colony had grown into a city of 1,000 people. Most of them lived in the underground chambers, but new surface buildings were being constructed as the air slowly became breathable. The dream of walking on Mars without a suit was getting closer every day. Taeyong's computer beeped with an incoming call from Earth. The face of his grandmother, Dr. Han Ji-won, appeared on the screen. Though elderly now, her eyes still sparkled with the same energy that had started the Mars project so many years ago. "Grandmother," Taeyong said warmly, "you should see what your bacteria have done. We've improved them just like you always dreamed." "Show me," Ji-won said eagerly. Taeyong turned his camera to the window. The morning fog was turning pink as the sun rose higher. In some places, patches of tiny, tough plants were growing in the open Martian soil. These special plants, developed by the colony scientists, helped the bacteria make more oxygen. "The air pressure is 30% higher than when you first landed here," Taeyong explained. "In the lowest valleys, it's almost high enough to breathe. We think in another 10 years, we might be able to walk outside with just an oxygen mask, no pressure suit needed." Ji-won wiped tears from her eyes. "When I created those first bacteria, I hoped they would help humans live on Mars. But I never imagined my own grandson would help them change the whole planet." After the call, Taeyong and Min-seo rode an electric cart to their newest test site. A dome had been built over a small valley, creating a controlled environment. Inside, the air was almost like Earth's. Plants grew everywhere, and small pools of water sparkled in the sunlight. "This is what all of Mars will look like someday," Min-seo said, looking at the green plants and blue water. "Not exactly like Earth, but alive in its own way." Taeyong picked up a handful of red soil mixed with dark bacteria growth. 3 generations of his family had worked to wake up this sleeping planet. The bacteria in his hand were the grandchildren of his grandmother's first creation, changed and improved by years of evolution on Mars. "We're not just making Mars like Earth," he said. "We're helping Mars become its own kind of living world. The bacteria, the plants, even the humans born here, we're all becoming Martian together." As they drove back to the main colony, the sun broke through the fog. For a moment, Taeyong saw a rainbow in the Martian sky. Another first, another sign that their work was succeeding. Mars was changing, and humanity was changing with it. The future they had dreamed of wasn't just possible anymore. It was already beginning.